Hello, hello, hello. The truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. So, what in the world is going on? It's just been revealed, something that they've been working on for years. And this is an amazing, amazing, amazing concept. Just before we get into this, we'll discuss it in a second. Something that I lectured on Friday night in the synagogue, which I think is worth sharing, is that if you want to understand life itself and your position in life, there has to be an appreciation of four realities. The first reality, let's call it the global reality, is that there has to be safety. Without safety, we cannot feel safe. And when we don't feel safe, we feel unsafe. When we feel unsafe, as we know, the brain has, this is what makes us different to animals, we have a prefrontal lobe, which gives us logical thinking and executive functioning that we can make decisions. Animals can't go on diets, we can't. And then we have an amygdala nuclear region. It's like an almond size, and basically a person can live, God forbid, like an animal just on instinct. There's no thought process whatsoever. And when we go into fear, literally it bypasses the prefrontal lobe. So if you look at a person's brain that, God forbid, was on anxiety for a long time, you literally see like the front of the brain is almost missing, like there was no blood flow there, and it actually can die. And the reason for that is because the blood literally doesn't flow there, because just like when you are in anxiety, your blood flow changes. It goes to basically, I think, your heart, because you need to be able to, fight or flight. Maybe it goes to your muscles, but it goes away from the digestive system. That's why people with anxiety have, I forgot what they call it, but some kind of digestive issue. And so anxiety is a very, very, basically the way it works is the blood changes where it goes to. And the same thing is in the brain. Where the blood goes to in the brain matters very much in terms of what part of the brain is functioning, the logical part or the instinctive part. Now, in order to be safe, you have to have governments that are going to protect you from criminals. And so having a justice system and having a government is the first and foremost thing. And, there's basically, if you had to sum it up, what's going on in the world today is that there's a war between the Judeo-Christian value system, which is the value system that gives us justice, gives us love, gives us peace, gives us the respect for the individual, gives us the value of charity and caring for the poor. And basically, Obama cult members, and he's really part of this problem, but being a leader, he was able to influence 17% of America, as Pew shows, that have basically adopted his stupidity. And what it all boils down to is exactly what Nazism is. It's an attack on the value system, on the Judeo-Christian value system. Now, obviously, Nazism, because it's coming in a country that already has a Judeo-Christian value system, can't just come like Rome, which is we came, we saw, we conquered, and we're proud of it, because the Romans had no value system. Saddam Hussein wanted to do that to the Middle East. He had no value system. So it's only in recent times that notion of we came, we saw, we conquered got, kind of put to the wayside, because basically the value system, as Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, very bright guy, says, that basically the world's value system became more Jewish. But those people that are brutes, and they're basically, all they live for is to make others miserable, which isn't bullies, and it's in schools, and we're not going to go into the psychology of why there's bullies, but it's obvious that there is. So they have to do what they want to do within a value system which goes against that. So in order to justify maliciousness, they always have to come up with an excuse. And often this is actually subconscious. They themselves don't know that they've come up with excuse. When they come from a value system, a Judeo-Christian value system, they often actually want to be good, but it's their instinct, just like a drug addict. wants to be good. In fact, most drug addicts are nice people, they're sensitive people. It's just this instinct has taken over, and they'll self-justify with every excuse under the sun, not knowing, because basically what's in your mind, what's in your conscious thought, is already a projection of the subconscious to create the desire that you desire most, because we're all filled with many desires. A simple example is, I see a beggar and I have $1. Now, there's a part of me that wants to help the beggar. There's a part of me that doesn't want to give away my $1. And so it just depends which part is stronger. If I want to give him the $1 more than I don't want to give him the $1, I could have lots of reasons to give, lots of reasons not to give, but it's just a question of which reason is strong. The same thing, I see chocolate cake. I know I shouldn't eat sugar, but which part of me is stronger at this moment? Maybe I'm hungry. Maybe I'm, depressed. There could be different factors that will move me to the chocolate cake more than they'll move me away from the chocolate cake. So there are a lot of different factors, but in every moment there's one desire that's a stronger desire. So unfortunately, when this negativity, this hate comes into a person's heart, that desire becomes the strongest desire, and then that person wants to hurt someone, and they'll create an excuse. And so this kind of, we're pro the blacks and they've been mistreated, or, all these kind of excuses, really what's good for one is good for all. So safety and security are good for everyone. I lived in Africa for many years, and there was this same dynamic which is coming to America. And basically it's kind of this shaming the whites, and the whites don't know, well, maybe we should be shamed, we shouldn't be shamed. But the fact is that the black criminals are more criminals towards blacks than they are towards whites. So criminality is basically about abuse, and it has nothing to do with white or black. And therefore, the idea of a justice system is obviously for everyone. The idea of charity is for everyone. All these kind of things, this is very, very important not to buy into the lie. Like, for example, Hitler's lie was, well, the Jews are evil. And obviously, if Hitler was a good person, he would be making Germany better for all people. But by Hitler said, lucky for leaders that people don't think. And, I hate to say this, but there's only one thing that I disagreed with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He's my master, everything he says, which I've learned through experience. It's not just like I was brought up just to think that. I've researched many philosophies, perhaps, I don't know if it's fair to say all, but researched the religions, ideas, then Judaism, the different strains, and I realized that the only one who really, really is on target all the time is Lubavitcher Rebbe. But there was one thing that I didn't believe that he was correct. When they asked him if a Holocaust could happen in America, he said tomorrow. He was in Germany when this crazy party, which is an ideology, came to power and influenced the Germans to become mass murderers. But when Obama came to power, this guy who really has no American background, he was raised in a Muslim country, and he was raised to hate America, and all his role models and the church he went to was all about hatred towards America and Judeo-Christian values. And so when people are just so stupid and so naive, they're not really bad people, but they're naive. And naive, like they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And even after he exposed himself in his first years, took us out of Iraq and allowed ISIS and horrific evil. And yet people still vote for him because they're afraid of being branded anything. And they're basically, the way bullies work is they're like, you may serve me, and if you don't, I will shame you. And subconsciously, people understand this. There's also people that are not strong. They don't have confidence. They don't have intelligence. Well, I shouldn't say they don't have intelligence. They don't have independent intelligence. They haven't really learned how to think independently, so they just take whatever the leader says. And so therefore, we have this new bizarre reality, a very dangerous reality in which there's this clash of civilization. And basically, what we're finding in the world today is that there are basically 4 types of kind of mass groups that exist. And one is the Judeo-Christian ethic, and that is very, very strong. obviously by most Jews, most Christians, and ironically by many Muslims as well. I would say it's very much common to Buddhism, which many people think originates from Abraham, and Hinduism, I don't know that much about it, but even they say they believe in one God ultimately. So I don't know much about it, but it seems like if you know the Indians, they're good people. They seem to value, goodness and kindness. So that's basically the essence of the Judeo-Christian value system. It's a belief in life, a belief in justice, a belief in goodness and kindness. That's the essence of the thing. But clashing with that, you have three other, if you want to call it civilizations or ideologies. Now, the first ideology that's clashing with that is obviously radical Islam. And radical Islam is not a small ideology. Radical Islam numbers 700 million people. Now, I don't want to go too long because it's a big subject, but basically radical Islam really is based in Saudi Arabia, and it's called Wahhabism. And Wahhabism started by, I don't know, some guy, Wahhab, and he decided that all Islam is incorrect, and basically, if they pray at the prophet's tomb, it's like idol worship. Islam is very against idol worship. That's why ISIS, which ascribes to Wahhabism, blows up all these kind of shrines and this and that. But basically, what he did is he was what we would call a fundamentalist. He went into the Quran and he said, okay, whatever it says in the Quran is correct, which is a big problem because if you read the Quran, it says over 30 times just to randomly murder Jews and Christians. And so if you actually look at the behavior of ISIS, it was no different to the behavior of Muhammad. In fact, as crazy as this sounds, they were better than Muhammad. Muhammad slaughtered Jews in Qurayza. As he's literally slaughtering them, he's raping the women. We're talking about the worst savagery, I don't know of anybody. I mean, obviously there are people that maybe killed more people, but in terms of the barbarism and the sadism, I don't know if there was anyone in the world that was more sadistic than Muhammad. And there's a Muslim, an ex-Muslim, who's offered $50,000 to anybody that can prove that Muhammad wasn't a pedophile. He took a woman, but she was 6 years old, one of the main wives of Muhammad. I think her name was Aisha, 6 years old, only consummated at 9, quite the righteous act. And I forget all the other things, but a megalomaniac. He's got a list of like the worst traits, and he's offered $50,000 on a single person can prove it, because Islam basically has two versions. One version is like a jurisprudence, basically, when they take the Quran and they create effectively a religion or some kind of law system out of it. So therefore, normal minds are looking at this insanity and they're saying, okay, well, these are the laws. And that's really what Islam is. And you've got many different versions of different types, but they'll all ascribe the same thing. Quran is the law, and we're going to give you based on that, the imam will say what the law is, and basically the imams come up with all these laws. But then there's another Islam, and that's unfortunately Wahhabism, which is you don't need anyone to tell you what it's fundamentalist. Just go to the book and see what it says. And what it says is to murder. What it says is to take sex slaves, which is exactly what ISIS did. And so the problem is that the greatest export of Saudi Arabia is Wahhabism. Just to give you an understanding, in America as we speak today, 80% of the mosques are run by Wahhabist preachers. Probably most of Europe, the mosques are sponsored and run by Wahhabist preachers. Pakistan, this is a very good example. They have these what's called madrasas, which are all these schools to teach kids. They're graduating 1 million suicide bombers a year, 1 million. Pakistan has 120 nukes. One of them gets into power, you're dead. So it's a serious, serious, serious problem. It's what created ISIS. It's what created the Muslim Brotherhood, which is one of the main terrorist organizations. Every other terrorist organization, Al-Qaeda, whatever, it's all spawned off the Muslim Brotherhood. Arafat, the PLO, Fatah, it's all the Muslim Brotherhood. And so the bottom line is that that's another reality. So the good Muslims are actually connected to the Judeo-Christian value system. The bad Muslims are connected to pure sadistic evil And that is exactly what ISIS is. It's about murder, it's about rape, it's about sex slaves, it's about torture, and it's about following the Quran to the nth degree. That wherever they came, they said, okay, you can either convert or pay the poll tax, which is exactly what the Quran tells you to do. And it's merciless. And primarily, if you go to the website Religion of Peace, which he documents all kind of suicide bombings, there's been over 27,000 attacks since 9/11. Most of them are against Muslims because part of what they believe is that they can declare, officially according to Islam, you're not allowed to kill another Muslim. But they can declare if the other guy's not really a Muslim. So one guy gets up, he says, you're not a Muslim, you don't agree with me, they kill. I've spoken to a guy from Pakistan. I mean, the place, suicide bombings, it's just insanity what's going on. So there's, let's call it the bloodthirsty mercenaries is the other value system. And then you have a third value system, which let's call it the idiots, which they basically want to destroy the Judeo-Christian value system. And they want to let in the bloodthirsty mercenaries. So you look at Europe, and this is what the idiots have done. They have basically, oh, come in. And it's basically kind of, they don't want to recognize reality. They don't want to recognize problems. But the problem is that just because you don't want to make someone else, you don't want to term someone else as evil, doesn't mean that they don't term you as evil. So they've been brought up 1,400 years believing that you're evil. You've been brought up not to believe in evil. And that's a problem. Now, there's a very big difference between a person who says, oh, everybody is good, to somebody who says, oh, everybody's bad, right? Evil always says that we're good, they're bad, let's kill them. Then there's a third person, like myself and most normal people, which will say, well, there are good people, there are naive people, and there are bad people. Now, I don't hate a terrorist. Hate always comes from fear. I don't fear them. However, I acknowledge that they exist. And if I had a button and I could eliminate them all, if I knew that they would hurt someone, God forbid, kill someone, I would eliminate them first. That's the obligation. The same God that says, don't kill, says, if you know A is going to kill B, you have the power, you have to kill A because that's protection of B. So the idiots would like to destroy the Judeo-Christian value system as well as bring in the Islamic system. It's like the Democratic Party. They're great great heroes are this anti-Semitic Muslim lady, and they're basically like Churchill says, an appeaser is somebody who feeds a crocodile hoping it will eat them last. The third is very interesting. Sorry, the fourth values, I don't know if you call it a value system, but the fourth kind of civilization or type that exists, I don't want to label, so I'm just going to use China as an example because I don't want to label too much, but you can use your own head. And that is people that basically are kings and they're seeking power. You know, China is a kingdom. People don't realize this. Now, it's not all bad. You need, like we said earlier, you have to have a government, and better to have a kingdom in China than not to have a kingdom. However, let us not kid ourselves. China is a kingdom. The premier of China is a king. He does hold the life and death ability over all the people in his country. And so therefore you have this other group of people, they don't have the Judeo-Christian value. They basically want to expand their empire. And this is very, very important to understand because they basically live in the old-fashioned mentality. Japan was like that. It was a kingdom. They want to expand their empire. The only thing that will stop them is the fear of the loss of their empire. But that's really what they're looking for. So, in summary, first and foremost, we have to have governments. Even bad governments are better than no governments. And we have to understand that God came to us and He gave us the Bible, and each one of us is directly obligated to God. And at the end of the day, we do get to heaven, and God has a direct relationship with you. And He'll show you everything that you did, and you have to be able to prove that you behaved the best you could. And we also have to acknowledge that where we are is where we're meant to be. We often would like to be somewhere else, but wherever we are, God wants us to do our best here and now. I encourage you to read my book, Kabbalah Love. I'll try to put down a link to it. But basically, I have there Discover the Meaning of Your Life. And the idea is that the meaning of your life is staring you in the face. You have to be kind to the people that you interact with. That's the meaning of life. And obviously, if you're a parent, you have a responsibility to your children. Meaning of life is in front of your face. And last but not least, God gives us different missions. Once in a while, you see a problem. It's your mission to fix it. Your life can only be meaningful if you take responsibility. And that's really what God gave us in the Bible. That you have a responsibility to the poor. You don't look the other way. You have a problem, fix the problem. So the world is coming into an unbelievable thing. And effectively, we're going to see the Mashiach very, very soon. And to the extent that we really do our utmost to believe in what's right and what's good, believe in these 4 things that need to be, we will encourage and hasten the coming of the Mashiach. And what I said in the beginning is that we're looking at, he's got a peace deal with the Arabs, and that is definitely messianic. And we're looking at the spread of the value system, the Judeo-Christian value system, which is that all people should have life, they should have education, which is mainly moral education, and they should have the ability to work if they want to work. They should have protection. Most importantly, we'll finish with the famous prophecy of Isaiah. It's actually called Isaiah Wall. It's written on the UN, that no more will nations fight. They will beat their swords into plowshares, for they will never teach war, because they will all live in peace and harmony. Amen.